February of 2000, the Hayden Planetarium in New York reopened after a massive redesign, and its exhibit on planets didn't feature Pluto. Now, it wasn't until a year later that a New York Times reporter realized it and wrote an article that sparked a media frenzy and even a cascade of angry letters from the likes of school children across the nation. Hi, I'm Michael Haggerty, and welcome to a conversation with the man many of those letters were directed at, the Hayden Planetarium's director, astrophysicist, and host of the PBS series Nova Science Now, Neil deGrasse Tyson. Neil, welcome to the show.
Thanks. And don't shoot the messenger. I was just giving the information. Right.
Plenty of others have shot at the messenger already. I don't need to. Of course, in August of 2006, a group of the world's astronomers and space experts, they got together, officially voted to demote Pluto down from planet to dwarf planet, and that started the whole mess again.
Yeah, the whole debate resurrected, and anger rose up again.
You got it twice.
Except the difference was, at that point, all the community were guilty. It wasn't just me.
Not just you.
Yeah, so the letters were now, there was enough to go around, and the flux of hate mail that I was getting just, it tailed off. And so,
but weren't you still the face of that hate?
The face of evil.
The one they burned in effigy?
For some, but it turns out that the second and third graders back in 2000 were then in high school with other sort of hormonal demands on their life.
Distracted.
Yeah, completely distracted. And the next generation of third graders were born into a world where there were 8 planets. And so, so that's really, we sort of age it out of the population, and we do just fine.
Who'd have thought those high school hormones could come in handy, distracting the hate from you. So what is the deal with Pluto? I mean, why do Americans love this so much? You write about it in your book, The Pluto Files, The Rise and Fall of America's Favorite Planet. Why do Americans and even school children especially get so fired up about something that's a ball of rock and ice billions of miles away?
Yeah, I had no knowledge or expectation of what I would find initially, though I thought it curious how emotionally invested people were in this object. Because I'm sure they wouldn't have been that invested in it. If we said we're going to demote Neptune, do you think anyone would care? They say, oh, that's interesting. What's the cause? But Pluto, they got, visceral about it. And so I did some homework on that to find out. And you realize that Pluto, the cosmic object, was discovered in 1930 by an American. And that's the same year that the dog, Pluto, was first sketched by Walt Disney. Pluto is Mickey's dog, by the way. And I know it's slightly off topic, but since when are dogs the pet of mice? See, something wrong in the mammalian order there, I think.
I know, you explained it in the book, too. This is perfect, like a scientist would explain this. You figured out the hierarchy because he doesn't wear clothes. That's the Disney rule. He doesn't wear clothes. That's your cue that he's a pet, whereas Goofy's a dog, but he wears clothes and talks.
Exactly. So if in the Disney zoology, if you don't wear clothes, then you can be a pet of someone who does, even if that pet is a mouse and you're a dog. So, because in our world, dogs eat mice, right? So that would be a quick cartoon right there. But anyhow, so the point is that when you're a kid and you first learn about the structure and layout of the solar system, that's around the time you're looking at cartoons. And there's a cartoon character, a lovable, slightly dim-witted bloodhound called Pluto. And I think it's that juxtaposition in our lives that you then carry with you throughout your school, that we have established an attachment, an emotional attachment to a cosmic object. That I don't know any other object out there where people are emotionally attached to it.
It's good to know that people care, I guess. I mean, you don't think that people are spending a lot of time thinking about space. Maybe some people are interested in it, but to get a nation up in arms over it, that's surprising. That's charming, actually. That people felt that way. They care.
And so, but once you explain the argument, people. For example, most Pluto lovers that I know didn't know that there's 7 moons in the solar system bigger than Pluto. They didn't know that.
There's just junk floating around there that's bigger than Pluto.
Yeah, there's stuff. Yeah, junk you don't even know the name of that's bigger than Pluto.
It was interesting that Pluto's moon is almost as big as it. It's like half the size.
Yeah, Pluto. It's half. Yeah, that's right. In fact, their center of mass around which they orbit is not even inside of Pluto. It's outside of Pluto. So it's more of a double situation going on there.
Yeah, it's like the Earth rotates around that axis, but Pluto's just rotating around something that's like over there.
That's over there, yeah, revolving around that over there, yeah. So there are a lot of really odd, unusual things about Pluto.
It's good that we got it out of there. It's messed up.
They're messed up, giving the rest of the planets a bad name. So what we found in the outer solar system is that there are other objects that have similar properties to Pluto. They're icy, they're small, They have really sort of cockamamie orbits that cross the orbit of Neptune. They're tipped out of the plane of the solar system. And you say, hey, wait a minute. If these other objects orbiting with Pluto have all these shared properties, maybe Pluto wasn't the 9th planet. Maybe Pluto was the first object discovered of a new swath of real estate out there in the solar system. And so I think it's a bigger discovery to say that Pluto was the first of a new class than to say it's the most diminutive of the class of planets.
It's kind of good news for Pluto. I mean,
I think Pluto's happier that way.
Yeah,
for sure.
It's the smart kid in the dumb class. It's the big, it's the biggest planet, or the biggest object in the Kuiper Belt. It's not
king of the comets
instead of the smallest planet.
The puniest planet. That's
takes
right.
that tiny move to make it the biggest and baddest.
I think Pluto's happier that way.
And it's that real estate you're talking about is the Kuiper Belt.
Kuiper Belt, exactly. Did your homework.
Yeah,
Very good.
Yeah, I even read the book. Yeah. Now, not both of them, but this one, which is way more than most people. So, hey, than most hosts. So, I mean, props to me.
What the audience doesn't know is that the Pluto book has many more pictures in it.
That's true.
So, just disclosure there.
No pictures. That's right. That's right. I only read the pictures. I can't lie. No, but it's fascinating. There's so many things. I mean, I didn't know about Pluto. I mean, the fact that it wrote, or its orbit is kind of, all the planets are on this plane of orbit, and it's at this angle,
tipped,
13 degrees or
something?
Badly.
Yeah, it's out. It's very obvious when you see it. Say, what's wrong with you?
That seems to reinforce all the sentiment that it's something different because it does so many things differently.
And that shouldn't be something to be ashamed of.
Yeah. So what were some of your favorites? I mean, the letters and stuff you got from some.
Oh, I got a letter. My favorite letter. In fact, we reproduce it in the book. Was a girl who said, "Why did you do this to Pluto? That's mean. That's discrimination against Pluto, and I think you're mean, and put it back." And at the end it says, "Write back soon, but not in cursive. I can't read cursive yet."
Yeah, that was great. That was great. There's one we're showing right now where it's got the kids like, "Hey, build a model of it and put it back in your exhibit at the planetarium. Here's a drawing of it, in case you didn't know what it was."
In case you didn't know.
Arrow, Pluto. This is it.
Yeah.
I guess the astrophysicist had no idea. It's the blue round one. I don't think it's blue though. Actually, there's some great letters. I mean, the kids of course say interesting stuff, but I think there was one apology letter. One of the kids wrote you back and said, "Okay, after all, maybe we were too hard on you."
That was a very mature concept. The kid was apologizing for how I was treated by other kids, and I thought, wow. This kid should be a diplomat,
right?
Sometime as an adult. We need more of that, So he had a sensitivity to how I might have felt, given his brethren were responsible for making me feel bad and sad. He didn't want me to feel sad anymore. Yeah.
Yeah. So what was the lesson for you as a astrophysicist, as maybe a person who speaks on behalf of science and astrophysicists? The lesson from this experience.
I think the lesson is, if you go back and learn. If you look at the educational trajectory of how and when people learned about the solar system, and we are partly to blame for this, if not mostly to blame, because we write the textbooks. You write a textbook, and in there is the section on the solar system, and there it is, an enumeration of the planets. And it's as though that's the solar system. And when you learn about it that way, you're thinking that if I memorize it, then I'll be a good student. Now help me memorize it. My very educated mother just served us 9 pizzas.
That was the one I knew.
Exactly. And so I think it was taught in a way where we gave unjustified significance to the memorization of a sequence of 9 names. Had the solar system been taught, we have these small rocky objects in the solar system. There are icy moons. There are big gas giants. And you learn that there are these.
It's a lot harder to come up with a mnemonic for that.
Exactly.
My mother served us very 9 pizzas. There are rock giants. There are many other junk floating around.
There is no science in mnemonics.
That's right.
All right. So all of a sudden, the enumeration of the objects in the solar system is put aside in favor of learning physical properties, deeper insights into what drives the solar system. And so had it been taught that way, I don't think people would have gotten upset.
This isn't the first time people have backed off. I mean, when they just started discovering all the asteroids and stuff out there, scientists back in the 1800s were like, "Oh my God, there's all these planets. There's 100 planets. There's 1,000,000 planets out there." And oh wait, maybe not. And then they backed off.
Yeah, because the first asteroid was presumed to be a planet. And everyone got excited. New planet discovered. And then in that same zone, they found another. And then another, and then another, and then another, and then another. And they say, "Hey, wait a minute. These are kind of little, and they're littler than anything we've ever seen, and there's like a bunch of them, and they're all in a swarm. And so a retraction was issued. Basically, it took about 50 years, but a retraction was issued saying all of these objects we've been trying to think of as planets, undo that. Let's find a new word for them. Thus were born the asteroids. And we have the asteroid belt, as we have the Kuiper belt in the outer solar system.
I thought it was interesting when the group of scientists met in 2006 to talk about the status of Pluto, and they had this vote. Some of the most brilliant minds in the world all together, they can't agree on what a planet is. What is a planet? What's the definition?
Well, the reason why they couldn't agree is because it was never previously defined. So it was a brand new attempt. So there was one time in the history of the world where planet was defined, and that was in ancient Greece. And planet comes from the Greek planetes, meaning wanderer, of which there were 7. Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, the Sun, and the Moon. If you moved against the background stars, you were a wanderer. By the way, the very word made it clear to you that they didn't actually know why it was doing what it was doing. It was wandering.
Out there.
All right. And so we give the 7 names of the days of the week derive also through Norse mythologies from these 7 planets. That's an unambiguous definition. Do you move? You're a planet. Then when Copernicus showed that Earth goes around the sun is in the middle, moon goes around the Earth, they had to sort of readjust that. But there was no formal definition given for planet. It was never challenged. And so now Pluto challenges this definition, this gentleman's understanding of what a planet would be if it goes around the sun. And when you challenge it, then you have to think hard about what forces are you invoking to give you that definition. And we were never taken to task on that before. And it's just that, by the way, we have that kind of argument all the time. You just don't hear about it because it's about stuff you don't care about. But all of a sudden it's about Pluto, and people think, what's happening to the world of science? Can't they even agree?
What are those guys doing back there?
Fact is, on the frontier, we never agree. You just happen to eavesdrop this time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's kind of the definition of frontier. We're figuring it out as we go.
It is the definition of the frontier.
But maybe we've gotten so assured of science and what it is, we think, oh, we know everything now. We ought to be able to define that. Is there a definition now? I mean, what's the definition?
Yeah, there's a formal definition. So a planet is an object large enough for its gravity to shape it into a round object. Okay? Because if you don't have much mass, your gravity is less powerful than the structure of the rocks on your object yourself. And you can look like a potato. Any kind of shape is possible below a certain size. Above a certain size, you're a sphere. Big enough to be a sphere. Put a check in that box for Pluto. Are you massive enough to have vacuumed up all of the debris left over from your formation? Not for Pluto. Out in the Kuiper belt, it's littered with, there's more mass in stuff that's not Pluto than there is in Pluto. And so Pluto does not dominate its zone. And so you don't put a check in that box. Pluto fails that test. It's a dwarf planet.
It's not an alpha male up in there.
It is so not an alpha.
Well, I want to move on because we could talk about Pluto forever, but this ties into, we've been hearing a lot about maybe discontinuing manned space flight or maybe moving it to the private sector. You've talked about that. I want to, before we start that, I want to start with a clip actually from The Daily Show, which you've been on, and The Colbert Report a million times, where you talk about the importance of having this spirit of exploration. Let's take a look at that.
You, Neil deGrasse Tyson, would go.
I'm tired of driving around the block, boldly going where hundreds have gone before in orbit around Earth. Give me a place to go and I'll go.
But you're not. And that's an exciting spirit of adventure.
Yeah.
I, on the other hand, find new wonders within the world we inhabit today. For instance, did you know Dunkin' Donuts now offers grilled cheese on flatbread? I know, because I'm an explorer. I haven't drive.
Now here's the thing. You can explore new food items at your local coffee house, but your life is not at risk, we don't think, for having done so. Astronauts en route to Mars, there are micrometeoroids going 6 to 10 miles per second that could puncture their spacecraft, puncture their spacesuit. There's radiation from the sun. There's the known unknowns and the unknown unknowns, and this is what separates the explorers from the rest of us. But if the explorers, they got us out of the cave in the first place.
Can I tell you something? God bless the explorers, because I am absolutely the guy who'd be like, so what is it? Like, believe me, I am absolutely the guy going, saber-tooth tiger, huh? Yeah, that thing's sharp.
clip from The Daily Show from just a few weeks back. So you said you don't want to be the one who, among the masses, who boldly goes where a bunch of other people have been. You want to continue to forge out there into that frontier.
If you're going to put your life at risk, as any explorer does and has always done in the history of culture, let the return on that risk be high. And just going into low Earth orbit, where the shuttle goes, that shouldn't be high risk, because like, where you going? You're going a couple hundred miles up. So,
but I guess NASA would beg to differ, at least whenever they've had a tragedy and things like that. I mean,
I'm saying, even in spite of those tragedies,
right,
the fact that it is still that dangerous is itself a tragedy.
We ought to be better at this.
Well, we ought to be better at it, right? We have 2 lost shuttles out of 130 missions. Those are not good odds if all you're doing is going around the block. Those are great odds if you're going to Mars. In fact, I bet you, if NASA announced we're going to send a mission to Mars, there's a 40% chance you're never coming back, but you'll be the first person to step on Mars. Line will be around the block, because that call will resonate with some members of our species who live for that sort of thing and die for that sort of thing. And so I'm just happy they're among us. I don't count myself there. Send me later,
You said in the clip you'd go.
No, I go, but I wouldn't be the first. I would certainly go, but don't put me on the first mission. Put me back at like the 10th mission or so. But so the urge to explore is real. It's there. It's been with us forever. And that's what has pushed forward who and what we are in our relationship to nature. So to deny a generation that thrill that so many of us lived through in the 1960s when we went to the moon would be, I think, irresponsible as a nation that has the wealth and the ambitions that I know we're capable of, or at least once had.
I know for our generation, it's like, what are our big landmarks? It's like, oh, now I got Facebook on my phone. You know? Like, that's like, I mean, that's still amazing. I can take video on my phone. It's, HD or whatever, whoop-de-doo, but couldn't do that 100 years ago.
Yeah,
but
the scale of the accomplishment is different. Yeah. I love my smartphone. Don't get me wrong, but I'd trade it for footprints on Mars any day of the week.
Do you think that the future of space exploration makes sense in the private sector?
Oh, by all means. So the way this should work is NASA braves a frontier, figures it out, patents are issued, they get the kinks out, then you slowly transition that to the capital markets. The capital markets is not going to value a first trip to Mars, because there's no return on that. You need government money to do that. But once the government has sort of figured out the landscape, then private enterprise comes in, and for low Earth orbit ought to be private enterprise. That's not a space frontier. So hand it all over. It's sort of already that. Boeing, Lockheed Martin, and SpaceX, there are these companies that are providing launch hardware to put satellites into orbit and the like. The next step would be whether they bring astronauts to orbit. If they don't do it, Russia will do it. Russia will sell you a seat on their Soyuz. You got 30 million, 40 million, you'd be up there tomorrow. And so to turn that into a space program, into a space industry, I think can be the best thing that ever happens to it.
All that competition can lower costs,
lower
make
costs,
better.
Efficiencies, and you commoditize it. That'd be great.
Let's talk about Nova Science Now, your show, a new season underway.
Appearing on PBS.
That's right. Check your local listings. But we've got that show here on KMPB, great show. And one of the shows in the new season that fascinated me, talking about, you think that someday, it might take a while, but someday we'll be able to live forever. You think that's a possibility? Yeah,
I think we should ask whether we want to live forever, but I don't see why, given our pace of understanding of human biology and biology in general, human physiology, why that wouldn't ultimately happen. What science does, it takes a mystery and solves it. And one of the mysteries is how and why do we age? And that's a target of research right now. So we figured out we figured out how old the universe is, and when it was born. Figuring out how and why we age ought to be easy compared with that. So sure. And one of the segments one of the programs of Nova Science Now is Can We Live Forever? And we try to attack it from different angles. Your organs, your...
Did you go to labs where they're growing? We just saw human lungs in a jar.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so you have the structure of a human lung, not yet lined with the cells that would make it all work as you need it to. And so they're basically creating the scaffold of organs. So in other words, if you have sort of a heart cell and you get a bunch of heart cells, putting a bunch of heart cells together doesn't make a heart. It just makes a mat of heart cells. What you need is the architecture of your organs on which you lace these cells that are the heart cells.
You build this sort of framework.
You build the scaffold. And so I visited a lab up in Boston where that's exactly what they were doing. So you can get a scaffold that your body won't reject because it has no living tissue on it. And we take your tissue and layer it onto that scaffold. We put it back in your body, and your body thinks it's one of your own.
It's not going to reject it because it's your cells.
It's your own cells. That's right.
Is it creepy to walk in that room and see the lungs expanding?
See lungs.
I mean, you feel like you were in a sci-fi movie.
I said, "Where's Frankenstein?" So he's got to be back here somewhere. So I felt like I was walking into the future. That's right, where you just see a bunch of jars, and I'll say, "I'll take that kidney and this heart and that lung," and I'll see you in the back room. You know?
Yeah.
And it's one thing to replace your organs to sustain your health or to prevent you from dying. The future of that might be, I want organs that actually can enhance my performance. That's a whole other place.
Oh, no. Don't tell Barry Bonds, please.
No, I'm not taking steroids. I just have 14 new organs in me.
That's right. He has 6 biceps. That's kind of weird. Oh, well, we won't test him. Anyways,
Yeah, so a fascinating future there. I'll be watching it closely.
is it as simple as replacing the parts, though, living forever? Because you talk about kind of like working on a garage on yourself. You know, there's one segment where you actually had that, where you were working on another you and opening the hood and changing things out. I mean, is it as simple as replacing parts?
Yeah, sure. You need a new kidney? Just get in line. We'll pull one off the shelf. We'll grow your cells on it and be waiting for you at the other end. I don't see why that isn't the future. I mean, why not?
You were able to do something that a lot of scientists struggle with, and that's talk about science and make it interesting and have fun with it. I mean, talk about the importance of being able to sort of talk about science in a way that's compelling.
It's not that I make science interesting, because I think science is inherently interesting.
True.
What I do is I will look a little harder than you, maybe, and find the parts of science that are most interesting compared with other parts, and I will celebrate that and bring that to the public. That's really all I'm doing. I'm not really making it interesting. Those lungs, expanding lungs. You don't need me to say, "Isn't this interesting?" Expanding lungs in a jar. So what I've done is, with teams of researchers and the rest of us, we comb the world of scientific research in all the various labs, and for having done so, we say, "That's good. That's good. This is less good, but we'll put it on the side. This one boring." Okay, and we might report on this verbally, but there's not many images for it, so we can't really. For example, it's hard to do a show on particle physics because the particles are not really sitting there for you, wearing hats and smiling back. So it's harder to do it visually, but we can write about it. So all of these segments on Nova Science Now have an entire sort of research backdrop on the web that you can go beyond just the imageries that make good TV. You can go for the content that's sitting behind it.
There is this sort of duality there where you think, okay, we've gotten so good at science, we can do anything, sending people to space, we ought to be great at this. But then, where it's blasé, look how great we are as a society, how far we've come. But then you stop and you see something like the lungs in the jar and you go, holy crap, that blows my mind. Like we are doing, this is sci-fi stuff 50 years ago and it's happening.
Yeah, happening here and now. And my hope is that this country continues to invest. My hope is that this country invests more than what it has been in innovations in science and technology, because many of us grew up in an era where that was just a given, that the United States would lead the world in our advances. And I don't see that happening right now. I see us fading, and the rest of the world recognizing the importance of those investments, rising up out of whatever doldrums they might have been in. And so we're just fading as they rise. It's both happening simultaneously, which means the effective rate is twice as high, right?
Right.
We're not just standing still and they're passing.
We're going backwards.
We're going backwards. They're going up. And, they're reaching a vanishing point. And I wonder whether they'll ever be in arm's reach again.
In just the last minute or two, we've got, of all the brilliant scientists you get to meet on the show and stories you get to follow, what's the biggest development or two in science that's going to, you think, dramatically change the way we live in the next few decades?
I'm a little biased as an astrophysicist because I like the discoveries of the cosmos. But let me say that that organ, those human organs, how can you not get into that completely? All right, in the Can We Live Forever segment. So I was very impressed and taken by the progress. I met a girl there who had a brand new kidney when she was an infant. And that kidney grew with her body, but now her body was beginning to reject it in her teens. And so the doctor is trying to figure out how to sort of replace that. And so this affects real people's lives. It's not just a vanity project. It's life or death for so many people. And in the real universe, the rest of the universe, the search for life, the search, what is dark matter, dark energy? Is there life on Mars? I'd like to go to Mars and find out. And I want to be a participant in all of the innovations and technology necessary to accomplish that goal, because that's what creates tomorrow. And nobody's dreaming about tomorrow anymore. And that's my big lament of the 21st century. Because 20, 30 years ago, every week, it was the city of tomorrow.
That's
the
right.
car of tomorrow. The kitchen of tomorrow. What happened to that? I don't know where it is.
Well, we thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us. Fascinating conversation.
Thanks for having me on.
Neil deGrasse Tyson is an astrophysicist and host of the PBS series Nova Science Now. You can find this and other episodes of A Conversation With at watch.knpb.org. That's watch.knpb.org. For KNPB, I'm Michael Haggerty.